Well, hello to everybody. I hope you all had a interesting viewing of the inauguration. I know that a lot of people who watch my channel would have been very pleased to see the election of President Trump, and therefore you might have been watching. I have some comments on that actually, but maybe I'll get to those in another video. What this one is about is Nigel Farage's chart, which looks very interesting because it ties in so well to what I've been saying about the UK chart and the possibility for an early election. And I think the kind of indications that Trump has given by not inviting any member of the kind of Labour Party or the current administration to represent Britain at the inauguration seems to indicate that he's going to be putting a lot of pressure on Keir Starmer, which can only be a good thing because at this stage I think pretty much everyone would be pleased to see the back of him and to see his ruinous policies, including, guys, just watch out. This week they're debating the Nature Bill, which has already got 200 supporters. It's a private members bill. It's so crazy. It would see the banning of importing vegetables, which, I mean, obviously you live in the UK. That's crazy. I mean, what are we going to do with bananas and everything? It would also basically signal the start of the end to private property because of all the alterations it would require to everyone's home to keep up with the whole Green New Deal. I noticed that Boris Johnson was there at President Trump's inauguration, as was Nigel Farage, but I actually saw Boris Johnson in the main arena, or the, what did they call it, the rotunda, when he was inaugurated. And it's quite interesting. Boris Johnson's not only not a member of the Labour Party, he's not even a sitting MP, is he? So it's a rather interesting choice of people. So anyway, let's now have a look at Nigel Farage's chart, which hopefully will be over there. I'll be looking at my little copy over here. And speaking about it, of course, I've looked at, this is the third time I'm looking at Nigel Farage's chart. It's a super interesting one. Just for clarity, so you all know if I'm accused of any biases, I used to be a big fan of Nigel Farage. I think I first came across him on the James Whale show in like 2004, and he used to come on, and I was very sympathetic to his arguments about the EU. I voted to leave for many reasons. For example, lack of accountability, lack of transparency, lack of democracy, the fact that it's a big gravy train for retired politicians to just go and sit there and not be held accountable to a taxpayer. As a conservative person, I'm all about small government, right? Small government, we don't need to have another massive, overinflated layer that we share with the rest of the EU who are just going to sit there doing we don't even know what, but basically, taking bungs and taking money from lobbyists and, we don't know what they're doing. It's not democratic. You can't get rid of any of the commissioners, blah, blah, blah. But even though you have to say Nigel Farage is the most successful politician that Britain has had in a long, long while. He won 2 elections. And you're probably going to say, which 2 elections? Well, UKIP won the 2015, or got the most seats under proportional representation in the 2015 European elections. And his Brexit party, again, did super well and got the most seats in the European parliamentary elections in 2019 when he hadn't quite left yet. So he's been super popular. He's really leveraged all his power, and he got a result, which of course he couldn't follow it through because that was up to the Conservative government under Theresa May and others who had no intention of following it through, along with the media who stood in the way at every point possible. But anyway, I started to kind of go off him when a lot of friends of mine, when he started the Brexit party, they paid an £100 fee, and they were kind of hoping to get invited along to an event to express their interest as running for an MP, but they never heard anything. It's like group, they took the money, they never heard another thing, and all the slots for either MPs or, in case European parliamentary members or MEPs were all taken up by former Tories, people like Anouska Rees-Mogg, the sister of Jacob Rees-Mogg, all these insiders, and it was clear it wasn't a party of the people. It was another party of failed Tories and special interests, and people were just using a lot of money to buy access to the party and to get into seats. Now, well, I mean, that's kind of logical. It's a small new party. They need money. Okay, so they do want millionaires and billionaires investing. Sure. But there should have been a grassroots element, and I don't think he was interested in that. And then so I kind of went off him. And now we have this whole thing with, is it Zia Yousaf, who's the spokesperson? He's straight out of Goldman Sachs, just in the same mold as Rishi Sunak. I mean, Goldman Sachs is the equivalent to banking, to what Pfizer is to medicine. Sued numerous times, totally irresponsible, unaccountable, breaking international law, left, right, and centre, if you could call it law, but financial kind of what would you call it, shenanigans that just aren't savoury. On a big scale with Goldman Sachs. And then he's got this Rupert Lowe guy who says all the right things, but when you look, he owns a company that's heavily invested in net zero products. So being against net zero is not going to suit Rupert Lowe's business plan, right? So he's got all those sort of people on board, which makes me kind of skeptical. Now, interesting in his chart, he has Pluto on his ascendant in Virgo. So Pluto in Virgo on his ascendant, and it's pretty exact, which is rather interesting because Keir Starmer has his sun exactly conjunct Pluto in Virgo. So while they both crave power, Nigel Farage is far better at using that power. He has the charisma, the personality, the persuasive appeal to go with it, whereas Keir Starmer is just incredibly wooden, like a block of cement. The charisma of well, like I say, a breeze block. But anyway, I will be doing Keir Starmer's chart as well. You'll really enjoy that one. I've got something a little bit quirky planned for that. So they've got that in common, which is interesting, given the time period and both coming to light. And Jupiter is currently squaring off, going direct at 11 degrees of Gemini, squaring off Nigel's ascendant and his Pluto, which indicates he is in the ascendancy, particularly being in with the Trump administration. And I did notice Trump was asked, where will your first overseas trip will be to? And he said, well, it's normally the UK, but last time it was Saudi Arabia. He said, oh, well, I don't know, if Saudi Arabia invests another 400 billion, I'll go there first. He seemed to have no interest in coming over to the UK. So hopefully he'll keep up the pressure, as long, like Musk has been as well. Now, so Nigel Farage, it just seems he's destined to have power with Pluto on the ascendant. And he already has had an enormous effect, known around the world. One of the other faces, along with Donald Trump, of the movement, the freedom movement, the people who just totally against this kind of neoliberal orthodoxy and all the other palaver that goes with that. It's interesting that he has Mercury conjunct Jupiter. Again, why he's kind of seen as a man of the people, he's got a bit of banter, quite witty. Sorry about that noise. 3 planets in Aries. So obviously he's Aries sun. He's also got Mars in Aries. That's what's given him his stamina, his drive, his energy, keeps him going, gives him that extra sort of drive. He has 3 planets in the 8th house. Now, 8th house is the house of money. No wonder he had a background in the city in finance. It also means the fact that he gets a lot of money from donors in big money, which is inevitable now in politics, but it's also worrying, because these people can buy influence and that can be a little bit of a problem. Saturn in the 6th indicates a kind of authoritarian side of him, and we saw that coming out during the jibby jabs when he was advocating Tony Blair as vaccine czar. So there is a kind of authoritarian side, and the Saturn in the 6th is also about the army, so he might be quite happy to go along with kind of military engagements like Ukraine. Now, Nigel used to be pretty good in talking about things like Soros, the role of international finance, talking about Ukraine and the nonsense there, and being slightly more, I don't say pro-Putin, but seeing Putin's argument, that's kind of gone away a little bit as well. So he's kind of shifting more and more to the center, which is also worrying. He's just being kind of dragged off into the central position, which I don't think is what any of us want. You see there the Venus in Taurus near his Gemini midheaven. Again, he is a diplomat. He's got that public appeal. He's great with public relations. You can see the rallies. He copies Trump a little bit like that. He's also a bit of a, you're going to see on arse, like, remember when he was hanging around Trump in the early days at the gold elevator waiting to get his invite? Yeah, he can be a bit of a brown noser, but generally he does have the essential elements of a politician, and he's got some really important transits, which I'm going to talk about in part 2.